Hello everyone, welcome to Code with Femi. I hope you guys are doing well. This is the actual video series for ASP.NET Core MVC, and we've actually looked at structure and config. We actually looked at middleware and also dependency injection. In this actual video, we're going to be looking at filter. What is a filter? A filter is actually what you implement. It's a component you implement within your MVC application to undo specific requests and responses. Let's jump straight into the actual documentation. And in here you would see that filters in ASP.NET Core allow code to be run before or after specific stages in the request processing pipeline. And right here you can see, just zoom in. Right here you can see that it says custom filters can be created to undo cross-cutting concerns. Examples of cross-cutting concerns include error handling, caching, configuration authorization, and login. So it actually also helps you to avoid duplication of code. And one thing I just want to point out here, because you would see that for MVC, it also helps to undo exceptions. And you might be wondering, like, wait a minute, Femi, but we made use of middleware to undo exception. So like, why, what's the difference? So in terms of filter, it is actually very useful when you have a specific error that you want to undo in a specific manner. In terms of also the difference between a middleware and filter is that middleware actually have access to your HTTP context, but your filter, on the other hand, has access to HTTP context and also the MVC context. So let's say, for instance, you want to validate a model. Filter would be the best component to use for this scenario. Or in a case where you're just dealing with the routing and also just working like specifically on the HTTP context, then you can actually use the middleware. And in a scenario where you want to do things globally within your actual application, and it doesn't really require the MVC context, then you can actually use the middleware. But filters actually it helps you to be able to undo specific scenarios like that are related to maybe a specific action. An action would be maybe your home index action. You want to do a specific logic to it that doesn't really affect any other actions you have in your MVC or any other controllers you have in your MVC application. So just actually bear this in mind. Filters, it's for specific scenarios where you also want to undo, you want to do something in terms of the actual model, or you want to do something with the MVC context. While middleware is more suitable when you're dealing with a global logic, and also you just want to write a logic that is specific to the HTTP context. I hope you guys get this. But as I show you guys some examples, you would actually understand what I'm trying to explain. But let's just go on here, and you can see it says how filter works. So filters run within the ASP.NET Core action invocation pipeline, so sometimes referred to as the filter pipeline. And as you can see right in front of me, the filter pipeline runs after ASP.NET Core selects the action to execute. So an action, I'm just going to go to the code. An action would be, for instance, in here, this is an action. So you can actually say that you want to add a filter to this specific action. And don't forget, from our last video, you remember we had this exception that we added just to be able to see how the middleware handles that error and be able to send the message to an admin. and also write a friendly message to the actual end users. So just go back to the document, and in here you will see that we've got your middlewares that we actually touched on, your routing middleware, and then you have your action selection. So once your action is selected, you can hook in a filter to do some logic. And what are the filter types that we've got? We've got the authorization filters, we've got the resource filters, we've got action filters, and also exceptions and result filters. But I would actually allow you guys to go into this document and read up more on it. I would actually just be showing you some scenarios here where you would want to apply a filter to your MVC application. So let's just go straight into it. First thing you want to do is you want to create a folder. We're going to call this folder filters. Okay, and after that you create your first class, your first action filter class. So we call this custom action filter attribute. Okay, so you have a custom action filter attribute, and this must inherit from the inbuilt or the built-in filter, MVC filter. So the name is action filter attribute. So we resolve it, and as you can see there, it's actually coming from this namespace, which is Microsoft ASP.NET Core.MVC filters. We can just take out the ones we're not using. And what you want to do is you want to override some methods in here. If you go in there, you will see that it's actually an abstract class, and it's got some virtual methods that we can actually override. So the ones we want to override is actually these two, which is your executing and executed. So let's do just that. So you use the keyword override, just the shortcut, and then you say space. It will give you the option. So we want to implement this, and as well as the other one, which is the executed one, right? So, and as you can see right there, we've got two actual methods. So you might be wondering, like, so why do we just have only these two? These two, actually, the way they work is when you make a call to, let's say for instance, this action, this would actually get executed first. The on action executing method will be called first. So this is your starts before action execution. Okay, so this will execute first before the actual index of that controller is actually being executed. And then you have the other one, which is on action executed. So on action executed starts after action execution. So that is actually the sequence, and I'm gonna just go back to that document, and you can see here it says allow code to be run before or after specific stages. Okay, so this is just one scenario where you might want to implement an action filter specific to either a controller or to a specific action. And let's just register this on this controller. So I just want to put it right here. Okay, let's put it right here because I want to like target that actual index. Okay, and we're gonna just say custom action filter. Okay, and let's just resolve it. So now we have a custom action filter, right? And the good thing about this is that now we're gonna put a breakpoint. First, let's just clear out all the breakpoints we have everywhere in our code. So to clear out all your breakpoints in your code, you can actually use Ctrl+Shift F9 on Windows, and that would actually just take them all. It will give you that pop-up, and then you can actually click on yes to clear them all out. So let's put a breakpoint here, and then let's put a breakpoint on this one and put a breakpoint on that one. So just pay attention to when I start this to see what would happen. So you can see starting the actual application, this is the first actual method that is actually been called. And if I click on continue, you will see that it's gonna go to that action. You can see right there, right? And then you click on it again, it goes, so it actually does all the necessary logic and throws an exception. But you can see after that method it calls that one. So that is the actual flow of how the filter actually works, the action filter actually works. And remember, we still have a middleware plugged in. That's why you're getting that. Okay, so now this is actually a scenario, and you might be wondering, okay, so what is the actual use case for this? What how do you use this? So there are cases where you might want to log your action, just to be able to check how long did it take for this actual action to really execute. So you might want to like track it, and also you might also want to actually, let's say in cases where this actual action is taken in a model or a payload, and you want to validate that model, you want to be sure that it actually it's valid, then basically you can also do those wiring. You can do all the wiring in here. So where you can have if context dot model state, you can see that is valid. So you can do something in here for that, instead of you going to put all of this in all of your actions, because I know some people, when they implement their MVC controller actions, they have everywhere. But basically you can actually implement this model state if it's going to be the same for all the different models you're going to be using, and just put it on top of your controller. So that can actually live on top of your controller. So, and once it's on top of your controller, what this means is that any action within this controller would actually utilize this actual custom action filter attribute. And also bear in mind, you can also register this on a globally if you want to. In the startup, you can actually register that within this actual method. So in there you can see we can actually just all options, and you can also check the signature. So if you go to the actual class, you can see right there that you can inject an action of MVC options. So actually for action, there's actually a delegate. You can do something like this, okay, and then you can have as many filter you can add as many filters as you want to. So one option will be like you doing this, filter dot add, okay, then you can now say type of custom action filter. See, filter attribute rather, sorry. Okay, so you can do something like this, and then this would actually register it on a globally for you. You can see this is how you register it. So excuse me, this is how you register it globally. Okay, you register it globally this way. So but we're not going to do this, so let's just take this out, and then we actually just want to focus more on that specific, this one, okay. Or basically we can let's put it on the controller, and then what we can now do is inside of here. Another thing you will be wondering now is that, okay, in a situation where I need to do, let's say we want to do login. This is the case scenario we want to like satisfy. Yeah, so let's say you want to do login, right? You want to log your time to see how long that execution took. The stuff you can do is you can actually say private. You can actually pass in an iLogger, okay, logger, and then this would be like your logger. Okay, let's make this read only, because we're only just going to instantiate it within the constructor. Okay, and in here we're just going to use iLogger factory, iLogger factory, and let's just resolve all this dependencies. So we have this dependency now that we just want to like resolve. This is actually the inbuilt MVC login mechanism. So it's already part of the dependency injection mechanism. So you can just add it to your whatever class that needs it, and then you can actually just initialize it by using ilogger factory.create logger. So that will create the logger for you based on the type of class that you are in and that you are actually planning to log. Okay, so something like this. Let's just zoom down a little bit. So as you can see there, we have the logger, passing the logger there, and in here you can actually say that logger.log information, and then you can actually say let's just use say context dot action. So action, you can just say action descriptor dot display name. So you can actually just, if you want to just get the name of the actual action, and say started at date time but now, or let's use UTC now, because you never know where you're gonna host this. But basically you have something like this. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see what is here. So we're saying that this action started at that date time now, and then the next thing is you can actually say ended at that date time. So basically this actually gives you some sort of like a login to track your your action, because there are cases where something is just running for extremely too long and you're wondering like what is going on. But this is where how you can also, one of the ways you can really tell, okay, this actual action is taken. Okay, sorry, I think there's an exception somewhere. Let's just see if we can resolve that. Okay, yeah, the problem now is that this actual filter requires you now to supply logger factory, but the thing is, this is where another filter can actually help you to ensure that the actual dependencies are resolved at runtime, so you don't have to explicitly set them here. So one of the actual attributes you can use is service filter. So service filter attribute will help you to resolve this actual one. So you can now say type of, so it actually expects a type, and in here this would actually ensure that this is actually but you have to explicitly say that it's actually that class, so you have to specify that class. But here you can see basically what we've done now is we're using another filter to ensure that that actual attribute or that actual filter is actually resolved at runtime. And one of the good thing about the service filter attribute is that you don't really have to, you can have as many dependencies in here. You can pass in, like for instance, our email service and all of that, and it will resolve it for you at runtime. But you just have to ensure that you've registered all your dependencies as well as this one. So for this to actually work, this would not work like this. If you run this, there will be an exception. It will tell you this is not registered yet because you're using this actual service filter. So what you want to do is you want to go into your startup class and register that custom action filter attribute, and you can actually put that right here. Okay, to say services dot add opt, so you can pass in that actual type. So now we've registered this, so that means that whenever we run this actual this actual controller or this actual application, it's going to resolve it at runtime, inject the ilogger factory into the constructor, and also make it available for us to log our information. So I just want to remove this, and then I will run it again and actually now see what is actually logged on the console. So as you can see, we we didn't put any breakpoint here, but the breakpoint there is it, right? And I'm just delaying it a little bit because I know this would have been registered. So if you check here, you can see right inside of the actual console, you can see there that it's saying that is the name of the actual action, which is your web. It says it started at that time. You can see there, it gives you the date, it gives you the time, which is actually really good because now you can see what is going on in your actual application. And also, I'm just going to go back here. Let's put a breakpoint here so you can actually see what is actually in here as well. So remember, the action is running now. It's gonna run now, and then we're gonna say continue, and you can see we have this executing index. Okay, say continue, and then you see it's gonna come in here. So let's go back to the actual log. You can see there it says executing index. Can you see? So the first one was executing this one. It's telling you the full the display name, index, and the actual application name started at that time, and then executing index. And then when we click on, okay, let's just open this and see what the display is. You can see there, that's the full display name of that actual action, that which includes the namespace and everything that you need for you to be able to know where that actual action is. And then you say continue. So let's go back to our console, and you can see right there that it has logged the time it was started, which was 03:50 as. So you can also see the time I'm actually doing this video. It's actually in the middle, like very early in the morning. So you can see right there, which is basically what is going on here. So in there you can see it says that something went wrong, which is still the middleware that is actually still handling the exception. Okay, so at least you get an idea of what you can now use action filter for. You can use it for tracking. You can also use for model for model validation. Another example I would like to show before we wrap this up is the actual exception that is specific to maybe an action. So let's just actually do that quickly. Let's create another action another filter. So this one will be an exception filter. Okay, so call this exception filter, or we can actually just make sure we always put custom in front, just to make sure that it's clear that this is actually something we made ourselves, because there's built-in exception filters as well. So we actually gonna inherit from exception filter. I'm just gonna resolve this. As you can see, it's coming from that namespace, which is the same one I specified previously. And in here we just have to implement the the interface. Let's implement the interface. So there you can see it's actually just so what is going to happen is this is going to undo the exception. You can undo the exception within this actual method. And how do you do that? Basically, you have your context, right? So a scenario is this: you have your middleware that is doing the actual global exception handling, and I just want to do something a little bit. I'm gonna add something here. Let's just say undid in middleware. Okay, and right there I'm now going to create, what I want to do is I want to create a new error page, right? Just gonna copy that, and then I'll just rename that to custom error. So like I said, you might have a scenario where you just want to do something custom. You're not really you don't want to do much, you just want to come up with your own design. You know what I mean? Like, you can actually just do that nicely. Yeah, and you can just say undid in filter. Okay, custom error, that's the name of our new page. And in here, this is where we're just gonna undo it, right? So let's just say we have a view result. So we actually dealing with view result. Okay, and then we're just gonna say new view result, the new view result. Let's resolve this one, and in there we're just gonna pass in a let's check, because I know there should be an overloaded method. Or okay, we can actually pass in the view name. So let's actually pass in the view name. So we say view result dot view name. So our view name would now be the name of the new view we just created. So this is actually a view that we've just created. So we pass in that view name and custom error as the name of the actual view name. And then what we can now do is we can say context dot result is equals to view result. So this means that we actually like providing a view to this actual filter. So this filter would actually, instead of we just allowing the exception to get to the middleware, the filter is now handling the exception by just showing a friendly custom error page, which nothing really specifically to the users. And so let's actually just make sure that this is actually registered on our action, because we have to make sure that this is registered on our action. And what we can do is we can actually just put it on top of that specific action. Okay, let's just register the actual attribute. Let's just copy this to actually save time. We copy that custom exception filter and replace the one in there. And don't forget, you would need to register this actual filter in your startup class. But you might be wondering, must I always do this? Anytime I need to use a filter, I have to register. Don't worry, we have another type you can use, which is called type filter. So the type filter is actually one that you don't necessarily have to register your types. You can actually, it helps you to do that at runtime automatically. But just bear in mind that this actual is reusable once you set that to true. So let's say, for instance, in here I say is reusable like equals true, then that means that the actual dependencies that I'm using within this actual filter must be singleton. And let me just show you that in the actual documentation, so that you actually get this right, because you might just be using it and then for some reason you want to use is reusable true, then you might run into some problems. But here you can actually see this is the type attribute filter, which is also similar to the filter, but it says here, but its type isn't resolved directly from the DI container. It's instantiate the type by using this actual namespace. But here you can see that you can see types that are referenced using type attribute don't need to register with the DI container. They do have their dependencies fulfilled by the DI container. You can see there, and it says type filter attribute can optionally accept constructor arguments for the type. Okay, but check here, it says here when using type filter attribute setting, so this actual setting which is reusable, just make sure that you can see there it tells you should not be used with a filter that depends on services with a lifetime other than singleton. So just bear that in mind. In that scenario, you don't want to run into any issues, because if you have a dependency that is actually not a singleton, and when I say dependency, I'm talking about this dependency. So if it's not a add singleton, then you can't it just avoid it. It's best to just use the service filter. But let's go on. So I'm just gonna take this out because it's fine. I'm just gonna make it register it at runtime. So like I said, in your actual startup, you don't need to register when you're using a type filter, but for service filter you need to register the type. So we have that right. And one of the things that you also just want to do is you want to do something similar as your handler. You want to make sure that you can log exception and also like send emails to your admin, right? So we'll do that very soon, but let's just run this so that you can actually see what I mean. So when I run this now, instead of the middleware handling the actual exception, now the filter, the actual custom exception filter, will handle it. And I've put a breakpoint here. Let's put a breakpoint here as well, so you can see that, you can see where, where it's been actually handled. Let's just see. Okay, so remember, this is still gonna be called because we still have it here, so it's right here. The action filter is still gonna run. If we even put a breakpoint here, it's still gonna execute all of this regardless of you having an exception or not, as long as it's actually like registered or like reference on a controller or on an action. So just bear that in mind. So we just starting up the application so that you can actually see what I mean. Okay, here you can see executing. So there you can see it's still running. Carry on. It goes into the actual action and it tries to execute it. An exception happens, and then it goes to executed action, executed, to say okay, I've executed that action, and then it goes to that filter. You can see custom exception filter, and in there you can actually see that the actual exception is actually being handled here. Continue, and what do you see in your page? You see that actual one that was handled by the filter, and you see handled in filter. So it's still showing you a page and all of that. So the middleware is not called. So the final one I just want to quickly do is to just resolve some dependencies here so that we can actually just close this up. So let's put in a constructor here, and then we're just going to inject the dependencies. So the first one is iLogger factory, which would actually you would have to resolve. It's actually coming from Microsoft extensions.login, and then we have email sender, then we can resolve that. Okay, copy those two, put that there. So we have that, and also remember it's underscore. Your private field to start with underscore, and then this is what you can do. You can hold Alt on Windows and hold your left click mouse and drag down to where you want to like write in, type in some information, so you can see there. So instead of me doing it one at a time, I can actually do that. That just helps with productivity. So you have your log. Sorry, so for this one, you just need your iLogger. You don't need to specify a logger factory there, because we're gonna like create a logger within the constructor. So you just say logger equals to logger factory.create. So this will create the logger for you, and the logger type would be this class that we are in. That's it. And email sender, we'll get the email instance sender of that came through the dependency injection. So we have that, right? And then what we want to do here is want to do something similar as to what we have here. And remember, we haven't also like resolved this. So what we can do to complete that to do there is to actually just copy iLogger factory and pass that into middleware. In there we just the logger was to gonna resolve the logger quickly. See that, and then we can say logger.create logger, which is your custom is it error? Okay, we'll call it error handler middleware. Then in there I'll create a logger for you, and then that will solve this to do. You say log error, basically passing the exception into there, and actually say error handled in middleware. Okay, so we have that, so we can actually just gladly copy those 2 lines and put them in our inside of this, to log it, which is basically that context.exception, and then we replace that with logger, replace that with email sender, because that's what we've got in this space. And also in terms of we don't have this is actually not a synchronous tax method. So what you can now do is you can copy that as well and replace it. You can just use get awaiter get results. So this makes it to ensure that this is synchronous. It's gonna wait, so it's still gonna do the normal waiter, and then it will just get the result for you. If there's an exception, you actually get the real exception. And also the good thing about this is that you can always call asynchronous methods in synchronous method. So we have that, right? So let's actually now run this and see what happens. But before we do that, I just want to go here and actually remember we have this fake SMTP server running. I think it was running on that localhost 8080. So let's just go there, the mail slopper. So you see I've been playing around with it, so that's why it has a lot of things. So let's just go purge the actual emails we've got currently. So now remove everything for now. Let's go back home. So we shouldn't have any emails here. No, cancel, refresh. Everything is fine now. Now in there, let's now run this and see what happens. Run that. You can see exception, then goes into the actual filter. And okay, this is still saying middleware. Let's just change that to filter. And let's run this. So basically, as you can see there, the log, there's a log here that tells us, okay, it was handled in the filter, and also this is the actual exception, right? And then you can also have a situation where, for instance, now I'm gonna put the same one here inside of privacy, so that you can actually see the difference. We're actually throwing another new exception now in privacy, because now we have one we have an exception for specifically for that action, and then we have one that's still gonna undo the global one. So let's just go back to this page just to be sure. Okay, this is still logging the exception as expecting, right? So what we want to do here is now that we want to just change the message a little bit to say exception from filter, and then we'll just say exception from middleware. Okay, so now we've actually corrected those two, and also I've put in an exception here to say privacy error. And also remember, the custom exception is using a custom error page that we created in here. Okay, so whatever you've seen on this actual page is coming from this actual page view rather. So let's stop it, let's run it again, and this time you're just gonna see how everything is going to finally look. So what I want to believe is that when we go to the index action, we should throw an exception that will be handled by the filter, and then when we go to the actual middleware, when we actually go to the privacy page, it should actually be handled by the middleware. So let's see that in action now. The first one is the actual index page. this will be handled by the filter, and we should actually get an email. So continue, and in there you will get the actual filter page. You can see right there. Then if we go to this, let's refresh this, you can see exception from filter right there. So this is actually an exception that was handled by the filter. Then let's go back to this actual page, and then we'll say /home/privacy. So this will this is another exception that has been thrown here in the privacy action. Let's continue, and in there you will see that the handler now is the middleware. The middleware is the one handling this exception now. Then continue, and you should not get this page, you should get that one. You can see. So this is just it. Let's just go back to this page and just refresh that. You can see, so from filter, from middleware, and this actually wraps the filter flow for MVC applications. And I hope you guys got a lot of value out of this. The next one that we're going to be looking at is controller and view, and I'm gonna see you in my next video. Keep well.